Here we go. So we're going to continue our work with series today. Instead of doing this by hand, start like from the very beginning, find the first term, second term, third term, so on and so forth, all the way up to the last one, then add them together, which we did in our warm-up today. I'm going to give you guys a formula by which it'll add them all together for you. Okay? So it'll shorten the work a little bit. So that's the goal for today, is how to find the sum of arithmetic series and how to find the sum of geometric series. We probably won't get to the infinite geometric series until next time, but let's go ahead and we'll get started here. So also, we should probably talk about what these things mean. The SN, that refers to the total sum. So you can get the total sum when you take the first term, you add it to the last, multiply it by the number of terms divided by 2. So let's go ahead and put that into action. We're going to do 3 different problems. They all look kind of different. They get gradually more difficult. So number 3 is the hardest one. We're going to take them one at a time. So go ahead and write down your directions and number 1, and we'll see what we can do. So we're going to do number 1 first here. 100 is the upper limit, 1 is the lower limit, and the nth term is 5k. So here we go. Let me rewrite it. Okay, now we have this formula which will tell us what we would get if we added all the numbers from the first term to the 100th term of the nth term 5k. So here's our formula that will do the work for us. So I need to know 3 things in order to make this come to life for me. I need to figure out how many terms there are in. I need to figure out what the first term is, and I need to figure out what the nth term is. So let's go ahead and list those first. N, how many terms are we looking at here, guys?
2.
There's 100, because it's going from 1 to 100. So n is 100. So when you have it in sigma notation, you can find n pretty easily. It's just the number that's on top of the sigma. That tells you how many terms there are, if it starts at 1, and that's the only kind we're going to look at. But let's go ahead and see if we can figure out what the first term is. Now, how can I figure out what the first term is? There you go. Just like we learned last class. If you want to find the first term, you plug 1 into the nth term formula. So my nth term formula is 5k, so I'm going to replace the k with 1 to get 5. So 5 is the first term. Now I want to find out the nth term. Now when they say the nth term in the formula, they had to put an n there because the last term is always going to change. But what is my last term that I'm really looking for here? I'm looking for the 100th term. That's the nth term. So what is the last term, T100? That would be 5 times 100, which is 500. Well, there's the 3 numbers I need to get my sum. So let's just plug it in and simplify. So we don't need to do all that adding work because our formula is going to do it for us. So let's do it. We have n. What is n? N is 100. Parentheses. T1 was 5. Tn, which turned out to be T100, which is 500, over 2. And so from here, we just have to do our order of operations. So let's do the parentheses first. 500 plus 5 gives me 505. Now my advice to you is you could multiply in the numerator first and then divide. I think it's easier to divide first. What number does 2 divide evenly into? Goes into the 100, right? Because that's an even number. So 2 can go into 150 times. And then from here, you're just going to need your calculator to multiply that. 20, say that again? 25, 250. Okay, so go ahead and write down number 2, please. Okay, Now the next two problems are a little more challenging, and the reason for that is because they're not in the sigma notation. So we're going to use our skill that we learned last class and just put it in sigma notation, just like we did on our quiz and our warm-up today. So how do we do that? We first need to decide if it's arithmetic or geometric. Now, I'll save you the trouble. It's arithmetic because the rule that we're talking about right now, the Gauss formula that we were talking about, the summation, only works for arithmetics. It doesn't work for geometrics. So let's go ahead and do this. First of all, it is arithmetic, which means what will my nth term formula be? Good. Now, what can I plug in here?
You can plug in T1.
Which is? What's T1?
2.
And the D?
2.
The D is also 2.
And then you delete them with 2 plus 2 and minus 2. And then you add the plus 2 with negative 2. Take a 0. So return 1.
Okay. So my nth term formula is 2n. All right, so we're getting closer. We're trying to do the sigma thing, right? So all I've done so far is I found my nth term formula, and where does that go in the sigma? It goes at the right of it, correct? And what are we always going to start with here, guys?
On n equals
1, right? N equals 1 on the bottom. Now we just need to figure out what the upper limit is, and that part was always a little bit trickier. So how do I figure out what the upper limit is?
You're going to take that Tn equals 2n, and then you're going to put the 100 where the Tn is.
Good. So you take your last term, and you plug it in for Tn,
Divided by 2.
so you can solve for n, and that's what goes on the top. So n equals what?
50.
Okay, well, now that we've done that, the problem is just like what we finished doing. So now that we've got it in the sigma form, it's just like the last problem we did. We have to start by finding n. So what is n? 50. What is T1? 2. And there's two ways you can find it. You could go through the trouble of plugging it in, right? Or you could just look up here. What was it? The first term was 2. And then we could find the last term, which is the 50th term. Once again, you could plug it in, or you could just look up here. What was my last term? It's 100. So we've got our three numbers we need. Just plug it into the summation formula. So the sum of the first 50 numbers would be, from 1 to 50, n plus T1 plus T50 divided by 2. And let's go ahead and work that out on our calculators here. Thank you. 2,500. 2550 is what we're getting. Okay, go ahead and write down number 3. This is another way the problem might be displayed to you, but once again, we're just going to put it in sigma notation so that we can find everything we need. So just to review, they can give you sigma notation up front. They can give you one of these, and we know how to put this in sigma notation because that's what we did last class. Now number 3, it's going to be very similar to what we did last class, but it's a little bit different because here's why. They're not telling you what the last term is. They're telling you what n is instead. They're telling you that how many terms are there? 40. So that's what n is. And we know what the first term is. It's 2. So the thing we're stuck on is finding the last term. But you're still going to use the nth term formula. So let's go ahead and just see what comes out of this. All right. 2, 5, 8. So it goes up by 3s. And that was it. We'll just stop there. Yeah, we can ignore the 11. It's the same thing. And we want to go up to the 40th term. All right, well, let's go ahead and do our sigma notation. First of all, we know this is arithmetic. So step 1, it's arithmetic. Step 2, let's use our nth term formula. So Tn equals T1 plus D times n minus 1. All right, so what can I plug in here? T1 is 2. What's D? It's going up by 3. All right, so we're going to simplify this now. We have 3n minus 3. So combine those and you get the following. Yeah, 3n, and then 2 minus 3 is a negative 1. So there's your nth term formula. So let's go ahead and start up our sigma notation now. What do I put and where do I put it?
Put it on the right side.
The right, and what's going there?
3n minus 1.
3n
and
minus
on the bottom you put n equals 1.
Good. So once again, we're just kind of hard put to figure out what's going on the top. And it's just 40. Okay? Actually, this one's even easier, but it's trickier because we hadn't anticipated this. N is 40. They're telling you to go up to the 40th term. So that tells you what n is. We want the 40th term. So it's going to go from the first term to the 40th. So now we just need to find our 3 variables. So what does n equal for our formula? N is 40. How do I find T1? You could just look at the series or plug it in. In this case, we'll just look at the series. What's T1? 2. Now here's the part that we can't just look at because they didn't give it to us. What is T40, the last term? Well, we got to plug it in. So if I plug 40 in, that's 120 minus 1, which is 119. And from there, you just use your summation formula. So sum of the first 40 terms would be
40 parentheses 2 plus 19.
119 over 2. And then you're set to go.
And then 2,420.
And we're getting 2,420.